The transport ship docked with a gentle thud that echoed through the metal walls. Jiwon pressed his hand against the cold window, staring at the massive structure floating in space. The Villani diplomatic station looked like a silver flower, its petals spreading wide against the darkness. This would be his home for the next 2 years. He grabbed his bags and followed the other passengers down the narrow corridor. His heart beat faster with each step. Jiwon had studied the Villani people for years, read every report, watched every video. But reading about something and living it were two different things. The airlock opened with a hiss. Cool air rushed in, carrying a faint scent of something sweet and metallic. Jiwon stepped through and found himself in a wide hall with smooth white walls that seemed to glow from within. Several Villani stood waiting, their tall forms graceful and still. That was when he first saw her. She stood apart from the others, holding a data pad against her chest. Her skin had a pale blue tint and her eyes were large and dark, like deep pools of water. Her silver hair fell straight to her shoulders. She wore a simple gray uniform that somehow looked elegant on her. She stepped forward and gave a slight bow. Her movements were precise, controlled. "Welcome to the station. I am Myra. I will be your coordinator during your stay here." Her voice was soft but flat, without emotion. She spoke perfect English, but each word sounded carefully placed, like stones in a path. "Thank you. I'm Jiwon Park. I'm honored to be here." He smiled, but she did not smile back. She simply nodded and turned to lead the way. The first weeks passed slowly. Jiwon learned the station's routines, met the other humans working there, and began his duties as cultural liaison. His job was to help humans and Villani understand each other better. It sounded simple, but it was harder than he expected. The Villani were polite. They followed all the rules. They did their work perfectly, but something was missing. They never laughed at jokes. They never got excited about good news. They never seemed angry or sad or happy. They were just calm, always calm. Jiwon worked with Myra almost every day. She was efficient and intelligent. She knew everything about the station and could answer any question. But she remained distant. When he tried to make friendly conversation, she would give short answers and return to business. One evening, Jiwon sat in the human quarters with his friend Hana. She was a scientist who studied alien biology. They were drinking tea and looking at reports. "I don't understand them," Jiwon said. "The Villani, I mean. Are they always like this? So it's empty?" Hana set down her cup and looked at him with kind eyes. "They're not empty, Jiwon. They're just in their baseline state. This is normal for them most of the year." "What do you mean, most of the year?" She pulled up a file on her datapad. "The Villani have a unique biology. Once per year, their planet passes close to its binary stars. The light triggers something in their brains. For about 3 weeks, they change. They become emotional. They can feel love, joy, sadness, everything we feel all the time. They call it the bonding season." Jiwon stared at her. 3 weeks? That's all? That's all? The rest of the year, they're like you see them now. Functional, intelligent, but without deep feelings. It's not that they're cold or cruel. They literally cannot access those emotions outside the bonding season. The information sat heavy in Jiwon's chest. He thought about Myra, about her careful words and blank expressions. She wasn't being rude. She simply couldn't feel anything more. "What do they do during the bonding season?" he asked. "Most return to their home planet. It's a sacred time for them. They spend it with chosen partners or family. It's when they form bonds, make important decisions, create art. Everything emotional happens in those 3 weeks." "That sounds lonely." Hana shrugged. "It's different from us, yes. But it's normal for them. They don't feel lonely outside the bonding season because they can't feel loneliness." Jiwon couldn't stop thinking about it. Over the following months, he watched the Villani more carefully. He saw the truth in what Hana had told him. They lived like machines that looked like people. Beautiful, graceful machines, but machines nonetheless. He wondered what it would be like to live that way. To feel everything for 3 weeks and nothing for the rest of the year. To love someone and then forget how that love felt. The thought made him sad. As months passed, Jiwon found himself watching Myra more than the others. She was different somehow, though he couldn't explain why. Maybe it was the way she paused sometimes when looking at the stars through the observation windows. Maybe it was how she asked him questions about human culture. Her voice still flat, but her questions showing genuine curiosity. One day, they were working together on a cultural exchange program. Jiwon was explaining a human tradition about gift-giving when Myra interrupted him. Why do humans give gifts to show affection? Is the gift itself important, or is it the act of giving? Jiwon thought about it. The act mostly. The gift shows that you were thinking about the other person, that you care about making them happy. But you think about each other all the time? She asked. Even when you are apart? Yes, when you love someone, they're always in your mind in a way. Myra was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "That must be exhausting." Jiwon laughed softly. "Sometimes, but it's also wonderful." She looked at him with those dark eyes, and for just a second he thought he saw something flicker there. But it was gone before he could be sure. The bonding season was approaching. Jiwon could tell because the station became busier. Vallani were making arrangements, booking transport back to their home planet. There was a strange energy in the air, though the Vallani themselves remained as calm as ever. Ambassador Doyun, Jiwon's supervisor, called a meeting with all the human staff. "The bonding season begins in 2 weeks," Doyun said. He was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes. "Most Vallani will leave the station. Those who remain will be different. I want everyone to be respectful. Give them space. Do not intrude on their private moments. This time is very important to them." Jiwon raised his hand. "Why do some stay on the station instead of going home?" Doyun's expression grew sad. "Various reasons. Some have no family. Some have lost their bonded partners. Some prefer to spend the season alone." He paused. "It's a personal choice, and we must respect it." After the meeting, Jiwon went to find Myra. He had a question about a schedule conflict, but when he found her office, she wasn't there. He checked the dining area, the gardens, the conference rooms. Finally, he went to the observation deck. She stood alone by the large window looking out at the stars. The light from distant suns painted her face in soft colors. "Myra," he said quietly. She turned. "Jiwon, do you need something?" "I had a question about the schedule, but it can wait." He moved to stand beside her. "Are you going home for the bonding season?" "No, I will remain here." "Oh." He didn't know what else to say. They stood in silence, looking at the stars. Finally, Myra spoke again. "I have been assigned to this station for 3 years. This will be my second bonding season here. I find it easier this way. Easier than going home." "Yes." She didn't explain further, and Jiwon didn't push. As he walked back to his quarters that night, Jiwon felt a strange pull in his chest. He told himself it was just curiosity, just professional interest in understanding another species better. But deep down he knew it was something more. He was beginning to care about Myra even though she couldn't care back. At least not yet. The bonding season was coming, and everything was about to change. The station grew quieter as ships departed one by one. G1 watched from the observation deck as the last transport vessel pulled away, carrying dozens of Vallani home for the bonding season. The station felt empty now, like a school after all the students had gone. Only a handful of Vallani remained. G1 knew that Myra was one of them, but he hadn't seen her since the departures began. He threw himself into his work, trying not to think about her standing alone somewhere on this vast station. 3 days into the bonding season, everything changed. Jiwon was walking through the garden section, a large dome filled with plants from various worlds. The air smelled like flowers and earth. He came here to think, to feel less surrounded by metal and glass. He heard footsteps behind him and turned. Myra stood there, but she was different. Her eyes were brighter, more alive. Her face held expression, real expression. She smiled at him, and it transformed her completely. "Hello, Jiwon," she said, and her voice was warm, full of life. It was like hearing music after months of silence. "Myra, you're different?" She laughed, and the sound made his heart skip. "Yes. The bonding season started 2 days ago. It takes a little time for the change to happen fully." She walked closer, looking at the plants around them. She reached out and touched a blue flower, her fingers gentle. "I forget how beautiful things are. Every year I forget, and then I remember again." Jiwon didn't know what to say. He had prepared himself for many things, but not for this. Not for the way she looked at him now, with warmth and curiosity and something else he couldn't name. "Why did you stay?" he asked. "You could have gone home." She turned to face him fully. "I stayed because of you." The words hung in the air between them. Jiwon felt his breath catch. "Me?" His voice came out as a whisper. During my baseline state, I couldn't understand why I kept requesting duties with you, why I asked you so many questions, why I stood at windows and wondered what you were doing. She stepped closer. But now I understand. I was drawn to you even when I couldn't feel the emotion of it. Jiwon's heart pounded in his chest. Myra, I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything, just spend this time with me, please? I only have 3 weeks and I want to know you. Really know you, he nodded, unable to speak. She smiled again and took his hand. Her skin was warm against his. The days that followed were the happiest Jiwon had ever known. Myra was everything he had imagined and more. She laughed easily and often. She asked him endless questions about Earth, about his family, about his dreams. She shared her own memories, speaking with joy and sadness and wonder. They spent hours in the observation deck watching the stars. She told him about Villani art and music, things that only existed during the bonding season. She explained what it felt like to wake from the emotional numbness, like being deaf and suddenly hearing sound. It's wonderful and terrible at the same time, she said one evening. They sat close together, shoulders touching. Wonderful because I can finally feel everything. Terrible because I know it will end. What happens when it ends? Jiwon asked. Do you remember? I remember the facts. What happened, what was said. But the feelings, she paused, looking sad. The feelings fade. It's like reading a story about someone else's life. I know it happened to me, but I can't feel it anymore. The thought terrified Jiwon. In just a few weeks, the woman sitting beside him would be gone. Myra would still exist, but this version of her, the one who laughed and felt and loved, would disappear. Don't think about that now, she said, as if reading his mind. She took his hand again. We have today. Let's not waste it worrying about tomorrow. But Jiwon couldn't help counting the days. Each morning he woke up and thought 18 days left. 15 days left. 10 days left. Myra became more affectionate as time passed. She would seek him out, finding excuses to be near him. They ate meals together. They worked side by side. In the evenings, they walked through the station's empty corridors, talking about everything and nothing. One night she kissed him. They were in the garden again, under artificial stars. She turned to him suddenly, put her hands on his face and pressed her lips to his. It was gentle and sweet and full of longing. When she pulled back, there were tears in her eyes. I've never felt this before, she whispered. In my whole life, I've never felt this way about anyone. What are you feeling? He asked, wiping a tear from her cheek. Love. The word came out soft but certain. I love you, Jiwon. I know it's fast, I know it's complicated, but I do. I love you. I love you too, he said, and meant it with every part of himself. They held each other in the garden as the station orbited silently through space. Hana found Jiwon in the human quarters a week before the bonding season would end. He was sitting alone, staring at nothing. You look terrible, she said, sitting down beside him. I'm fine. You're lying. She handed him a cup of tea. Talk to me. Jiwon took a long breath. What happens when someone you love forgets how to love you back? Hana was quiet for a moment. I don't know. I'm sorry, Jiwon, I really am. I knew this would happen. From the start, I knew. But I fell in love anyway. What does that say about me? It says you're human, Hana said gently. It says you have hope. That's not a bad thing. It feels like a bad thing right now. On the last day of the bonding season, Myra asked Jiwon to meet her in the observation deck. When he arrived, she was standing at the window watching the stars. The light made her silver hair glow. She turned when she heard him. Her eyes were red from crying. It ends tomorrow, she said. By this time tomorrow, I won't feel anything. Jiwon crossed the room and took her in his arms. She buried her face against his chest. I don't want to forget, she said, her voice muffled. I don't want to forget how this feels. How you make me feel. You won't forget completely. You'll remember the facts, but not the feeling. And feelings are what matter. She pulled back to look at him. Jiwon, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Don't hate the person I become tomorrow. She isn't cruel. She isn't trying to hurt you. She simply cannot feel what I feel now. Please don't hate her. She's still me, just a different version of me. I could never hate you. Any version of you. She kissed him then, long and deep, trying to pour all her love into that single moment. When they finally separated, she rested her forehead against his. These 3 weeks were the best of my life, she whispered. Thank you for giving them to me. Thank you for staying, he said. They stood together in the starlight, holding each other as the minutes ticked away. The next morning, Jiwon woke early. He dressed carefully and made his way to Myra's quarters. His hand trembled as he pressed the door chime. The door opened. Myra stood there, already dressed in her uniform. Her face was calm and empty. Her eyes were distant. "Jiwon," she said. Her voice was flat again, emotionless. "Do you need something?" He looked at her, at this woman who had held him just hours ago, who had cried in his arms, who had told him she loved him. Now she looked at him like he was just another colleague. "No," he said quietly. "I was just checking if you needed anything. I am well." "Thank you." She paused, tilting her head slightly. "Did something happen during the bonding season? There are records showing we spent significant time together." Jiwon's heart broke. She didn't remember. Not really. To her, their time together was just data, just facts in a file. "We talked," he said, "about work, about culture. Nothing important, I see. Well, I should prepare for the returning staff. The ships will arrive soon, of course. I'll let you get to work." He turned to leave. As he walked away, he heard her voice behind him. "Jiwon?" He stopped and looked back. She stood in the doorway, her expression still blank, but something flickered in her eyes. "Something small and uncertain, yes? Thank you. For whatever happened during the bonding season, the records show that I was happy, so thank you." Jiwon managed a small smile. "You're welcome." He walked away quickly before she could see the tears in his eyes. The long wait had begun. The months crawled by like wounded animals. Jiwon went through his daily routines on the station, but everything felt hollow. He worked with Myra almost every day, and each interaction was a small knife to his heart. She was professional and polite. She answered his questions and completed her tasks perfectly, but she was empty again. That beautiful shell with nothing warm inside. When he looked into her eyes, he saw no recognition of what they had shared. No memory of the love she had felt. At night, alone in his quarters, Jiwon wrote letters. He knew Myra would never read them in her baseline state. She wouldn't understand them even if she did. But he wrote anyway, pouring his heart onto the page. He wrote about the day she first smiled at him in the garden. The way her laugh had sounded like music. The feeling of her hand in his. The taste of her kiss. He wrote everything down, desperate to preserve what they had shared. Hana visited him often. She worried about him, he could tell. One evening, 3 months after the bonding season ended, she brought him dinner and refused to leave until he ate. "You're losing weight," she said, watching him push food around his plate. "I'm fine." "No, you're not." "Jiwon, you can't keep living like this. It's not healthy. What else am I supposed to do? Forget about her? Pretend those 3 weeks didn't happen?" Hana sighed. "No, but you need to decide if you can really do this. 9 more months until the next bonding season. And then 3 weeks with her, and then 11 months apart again. Can you live that way?" Year after year. Jiwon was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "I don't know, but I know I can't leave her. Even if she doesn't remember loving you, she chose to stay for me. Before she could feel anything, she made that choice. That has to mean something." He looked at Hana with tired eyes. "I love her. Both versions of her, the one who can feel and the one who can't. How can I abandon her just because loving her is hard?" Hana reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "You're a good man, Jiwon. I just hope this doesn't destroy you." Ambassador Doyun called Jiwon to his office 5 months after the bonding season ended. The older man looked concerned as Jiwon sat down. "I need to talk to you about something," Doyun said. "And I want you to listen before you react." Jiwon nodded. "I know what happened during the bonding season. With you and Myra." Doyun held up a hand as Jiwon started to speak. "No one told me. I've just been doing this job long enough to recognize the signs. I'm still doing my job," Jiwon said defensively. "My work hasn't suffered, I know. That's not why I called you here." Doyun leaned back in his chair. 20 years ago, I fell in love with a Villani woman. Her name was Sarah. We met on a different station, one much like this." Jiwon stared at him. "You never told me that. It's not something I talk about, but I think you need to hear it." Doyun's eyes grew distant. "For 3 years, I lived the cycle you're starting now. 3 weeks of happiness, 11 months of heartbreak. Each year, Sarah would wake up during the bonding season and love me completely. And each year, she would fade back to baseline and forget how that love felt." "What happened?" After 3 years, I couldn't take it anymore. I was in love with a woman who only existed 3 weeks out of the year. The rest of the time, I was living with a stranger who happened to look like her. Doyen shook his head sadly. I requested a transfer. I left without saying goodbye. I couldn't face telling her during the bonding season that I was leaving. And her baseline self wouldn't have cared anyway. Do you regret it? Every day. But I also don't know if I could have survived continuing. Doyen looked directly at Jiwon. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand what you're choosing. This won't get easier. It will get harder. Each cycle of hope and loss will wear you down a little more. I appreciate the warning, Jiwon said quietly, but I'm not leaving. I thought you might say that. Just know that if you ever change your mind, I'll help you transfer. No questions asked. As the months passed, something strange began to happen. Baseline Myra started seeking out Jiwon more often. Not for work, though she always had a work-related excuse. She would find him in the observation deck and stand beside him in silence. She would ask him questions about human emotions and relationships. One day, 7 months after the bonding season ended, she came to his quarters. Jiwon answered the door, surprised. Myra, is everything okay? I need to ask you something, she said. Her voice was still flat, but there was something in her eyes, a tension he hadn't seen before. Come in. She entered and stood in the middle of his small quarters, looking uncomfortable. Jiwon waited. During the last bonding season, my emotional self kept very detailed records. She wrote down everything that happened between us. Everything she felt. Myra paused. I have read these records many times. Jiwon's heart beat faster. Okay, I do not understand them. I cannot feel what she felt. But I can see that she was happy. That you made her happy. Myra looked at him directly. Why do you stay? You could transfer to another station. You could find someone of your own species who can love you constantly. Why do you remain here with someone who cannot give you what you need? Jiwon took a deep breath. This was the most emotion he had seen from baseline Myra since the bonding season ended. Because love doesn't require the other person to love you back every moment, he said carefully. You chose to stay on this station for me before you could even feel why. That choice matters. And yes, I miss the you that can feel, but you're still you even now. I don't stop loving someone just because it becomes difficult. Myra was silent for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was slightly different. Less flat, more uncertain. In my records, my emotional self wrote that human love is constant. That you feel your emotions every day, every hour. Is this true? Yes, we don't turn our emotions on and off. We feel them all the time. That sounds exhausting. Jiwon smiled sadly. Sometimes it is. But it's also beautiful. To care about someone every day, to think about them, to hope for their happiness even when they're not with you. Myra looked down at her hands. I cannot give you that. I cannot return that kind of love. Not for 49 weeks of the year, I know. Yet you stay. Yes. She met his eyes. I do not understand you, Jiwon Park. But my records indicate that I will understand in 2 months when the next bonding season begins. And that version of me asked me to take care of you until she can wake up again. Jiwon felt tears prick his eyes. Even without emotions, baseline Myra was trying to honor what her emotional self had felt. Thank you, he said softly. She nodded once and turned to leave. At the door she paused. Jiwon, yes? I may not be able to feel it, but I want you to know, I am glad you stayed. Intellectually, I can recognize that what you are doing is remarkable. You are a good man. She left before he could respond. Jiwon sat down on his bed, shaking. It wasn't the same as hearing Myra say she loved him. But it was something, a small light in the darkness. The final 2 months passed slowly. The station began its preparations for the bonding season again. Ships were scheduled. Private quarters were reserved. The Vallani, who had been away for the year, began returning. Jiwon watched it all with a mixture of hope and fear. He would see her again soon. The real her, the one who could feel. But he had survived one long wait. Could he survive another after this bonding season ended? And another after that? He didn't know. All he knew was that he loved Myra, and for now that was enough. 2 days before the bonding season was set to begin, baseline Myra came to find him one last time. They stood together in the observation deck looking out at the stars in comfortable silence. She will remember you, Myra said quietly. My emotional self. When she wakes, she will remember everything. And she will be happy to see you. Ji-won smiled. I'll be happy to see her too. I have written a message for her. For myself. Telling her that you were faithful. That you waited. She will appreciate knowing that. Thank you, Myra. For everything. She looked at him, and for just a moment he thought he saw the beginning of warmth in her eyes. The first hint of the change to come. I should go, she said. The transition will begin soon. I will see you again in a few days. I'll be here. As she walked away, Ji-won whispered to himself, I'll always be here. The second bonding season was about to begin, and with it, another chance at the 3 weeks of love that made all the waiting worth it. The second bonding season arrived like spring after a long winter. Ji-won felt it in the air before he saw the changes. The station seemed brighter somehow, more alive. He was in his quarters when his door chimed. When he opened it, Myra stood there with tears streaming down her face. But she was smiling, that beautiful smile he had dreamed about for 11 months. You stayed, she said, her voice breaking. You really stayed. Ji-won pulled her into his arms. She clung to him, sobbing against his shoulder. All the emotion she couldn't feel for almost a year came pouring out. Of course I stayed, he whispered into her hair. I told you I would. My baseline self left me notes. She told me how you waited, how you never gave up. Myra pulled back to look at him. Do you know how rare that is? How precious. They spent the first week of the bonding season making up for lost time. They talked for hours, Myra asking him about every day of the past 11 months. Ji-won told her everything, leaving nothing out. The lonely nights, the moments of doubt, the way baseline Myra had tried to honor what her emotional self had felt. She did that for me? Myra asked, amazed. Even without feelings? She did. She read your records and tried to understand. She couldn't feel love, but she could recognize its importance. Myra was quiet for a moment. I write those records for her. For myself. Each bonding season, I document everything, hoping she'll understand even a little, but she never has before. This is the first time she's ever responded. The second week brought a shadow over their happiness. During a routine meeting, Ambassador Doyon received a message from the Vallani Council. They wanted to speak with Myra immediately. Myra came back from that call with fear in her eyes. Ji-won found her in their usual spot in the observation deck. What did they say? He asked. The council knows about us. About our relationship, her voice trembled. They're ordering me to return home for the rest of the bonding season. Ji-won felt cold. Why? They say it's for my own protection. That cross-species relationships like ours are harmful. That I'm trapped in a cycle that will only bring me pain. She grabbed his hands. But they're wrong. Yes, it hurts when I return to baseline, but these weeks with you make everything worth it. When do you have to leave? Tomorrow? A ship is coming for me. Tears ran down her face again. Ji-won, I don't want to go. I want to stay here with you. Then don't go. It's not that simple. If I refuse, the council could bar me from ever returning to this station. They could separate us permanently. Ji-won pulled her close. His mind raced. If Myra left now, he wouldn't see her again during this bonding season. And who knew what the council would do to ensure they stayed apart? That night, Ji-won made a decision. He went to Hana's quarters and explained the situation. I need to go to the Vallani homeworld, he said. I need to talk to this council. Hana stared at him. That's impossible. Humans aren't allowed on the homeworld during bonding season. It's sacred to them. Then I'll be the first exception. Ji-won, if you do this, you could lose your career. Ambassador Doyon will never approve it. You'd be going against direct diplomatic protocol. I know, but I can't lose her, Hana, I can't. Hana looked at him for a long moment. Then she sighed. You're completely insane. But I'll help you. Give me a few hours. Through a series of favors and some creative rule-bending, Hana and a Vallani named Talon arranged for Ji-won to board a supply ship heading to the homeworld. It wasn't legal, but it was possible. Ji-won left the station without telling Ambassador Doyon. He left a message explaining everything, knowing it would end his career. But some things were worth any price. The Vallani homeworld was beautiful. 2 suns hung in the sky, their light painting everything in shades of gold and pink. Cities rose like crystals from green landscapes, but Ji-won barely noticed. He was taken directly to the council chambers. Elder Saris, the head of the council, looked at him with cold disapproval. You should not be here, human. This is a violation of our sacred time. I know. I apologize for that, but I need to speak with you about Myra. There is nothing to discuss. We have made our decision. Myra will not return to your station. Why? What harm are we doing? Another council member spoke up. You are causing her pain. Each cycle she experiences love for 3 weeks and then loses it for 11 months. This is cruel. With respect, shouldn't that be Myra's choice? Her emotional self cannot make rational decisions, Elder Sarah said. During bonding season, we are ruled by feelings, not logic. Jiwon took a deep breath. This was his moment. Everything depended on what he said next. You say I cause Myra pain. You're right, but you're also wrong. He looked at each council member in turn. Yes, it hurts when the bonding season ends. For both of us. But that pain exists because the love is real. And that love makes both of us better. Elder Cirrus frowned. What do you know of our ways? You are human. You feel your emotions constantly. You cannot understand what it is like to be Villani. You're right, I can't. But I can tell you what I do understand. Jiwon's voice grew stronger. I understand what it means to love someone who can only love me back for 3 weeks a year. I understand spending 11 months alone, holding on to memories, writing letters that will never be read. I understand the pain of looking into the eyes of someone you love and seeing a stranger looking back. The council members were listening now, really listening. But I also understand this. Love doesn't require constant reciprocation. It requires commitment. It requires choosing to stay even when it's hard. Even when it hurts, he paused. Myra chose to stay on that station before she could feel why. Her baseline self made that choice. Doesn't that tell you something? A younger council member leaned forward. What does it tell us? That even without emotions, some part of her recognized something important in our connection. Her baseline self couldn't feel love, but she could recognize its value. She protected our relationship during those 11 months. She left notes for her emotional self. She tried to understand. Elder Sarah shook her head. You still do not answer the fundamental question. You claim to love her, but you love a version of her that exists only 3 weeks per year. What of the other 11 months? Do you love her then? This was the question Jiwon had been waiting for. The one he had thought about every day for the past 11 months. Yes, he said simply. I love both versions of her. The Myra who laughs and cries and feels everything, and the Myra who speaks in flat tones and processes the world through logic. They're both her. Both equally real, both equally worthy of love. He stepped closer to the council. You ask what makes human love different from Villani love? This is it, we love constantly. Through good times and bad. Through joy and pain. When our partners are awake and when they sleep. When they're happy and when they're sad. We love them when they can love us back and when they can't. The council chamber was silent. Even Elder Saris seemed moved by his words. I will wait 11 months every year for 3 weeks with the woman I love, Jiwon continued. I will write letters she'll never read. I will wake up every morning missing her. I will work beside her baseline self and see a stranger in familiar eyes. And I will do all of this gladly, because that's what love is. It's choosing to stay. It's choosing to commit. It's choosing to give your heart completely even when you know it will break. He looked directly at Elder Cirrus. You think you're protecting Myra by separating us, but you're taking away her choice. Her right to decide what pain is worth enduring for the love she feels. And you're showing her that you don't trust her judgment, even when both versions of herself agree. Elder Saris was quiet for a long time. Finally she spoke. You make a compelling argument, Jiwon Park, but this is not a decision we can make lightly. We must consider the long-term effects. The precedent this would set. Then let me offer this. Study us. Document our relationship. Watch how we navigate the cycles. If at any point either Myra or I decide it's too much, we'll end it. But give us the chance to try. The council members looked at each other. Silent communication passed between them, the kind that came from years of working together. Finally, Elder Cirrus nodded. Very well. We will allow the relationship to continue under observation. But know this, if we determine that harm is being done to either party, we will intervene again. Jiwon felt relief wash over him. Thank you. That's all I ask. There is one more thing, Elder Sarah said. You have demonstrated something remarkable today. This capacity for constant devotion that you describe. We have never encountered anything like it in other species. We would like to study this phenomenon, to understand it better. Jiwon nodded. I'll cooperate with any research you want to do. As he left the council chambers, Jiwon saw Myra waiting outside. She ran to him and threw her arms around him. They told me you were here, that you came for me. She pulled back, eyes shining. You gave up everything. Not everything. I still have you. She kissed him then, right there in the hallway of the council building, with the two suns of her homeworld shining through the windows. They spent the rest of the bonding season on the homeworld. For the first time, Jiwon saw Myra in her natural environment, met other Vallani during their emotional period, and began to understand her species better. And when they returned to the station, it was together, ready to face whatever came next. 3 years passed. 3 cycles of joy and loss, hope and heartbreak. Jiwon and Myra learned to live within the rhythm of her biology, making peace with what they could not change. Each bonding season, Myra would wake up with tears of happiness, grateful that Jiwon had stayed. They would spend 3 precious weeks together, cramming a year's worth of love into 21 days. And then she would fade back to baseline and the long wait would begin again. But something remarkable was happening. With each cycle, baseline Myra became more engaged with Jiwon. She still couldn't feel romantic love, but she developed something else: respect, appreciation, a kind of deep care that existed beyond emotion. During the baseline months, she would check on him, make sure he was eating properly, remind him to rest. She read everything her emotional self wrote and tried to honor those feelings in her own way. The Vallani Council kept their word. They studied Jiwon's emotional patterns, his brain activity, his behavior during both the bonding and baseline periods. What they found surprised them. Elder Saris called Jiwon to a video conference midway through the 3rd year. We have analyzed 3 years of data, she said. Her tone was less cold than before. Your emotional consistency is remarkable. Most beings, even emotional ones, show fluctuation in their attachment over time, but you do not. Your commitment to Myra remains constant regardless of how she responds to you. Jiwon shrugged. I told you, that's what human love is like. We are beginning to understand that now, and it has implications we did not expect. Elder Saris paused. Your relationship with Myra is being studied across multiple species. Other cross-species couples are looking to you as proof that love can transcend biological differences. I never meant to become some kind of example. Nevertheless, you have become one. The council has decided to formally recognize your relationship. We will no longer interfere. After the call ended, Jiwon sat in his quarters feeling strange. He had never wanted to be famous or studied. He just wanted to love Myra. But if their relationship could help others, maybe all the pain had a larger purpose. During the 4th year, the Vallani scientists made a breakthrough. They discovered that they could potentially extend the bonding season using targeted light therapy. Not permanently, but perhaps doubling or even tripling its length. The treatment was experimental and carried risks. When they offered it to Myra, both her emotional and baseline selves had to agree. Baseline Myra came to Jiwon to discuss it. They sat in the observation deck, their usual spot. The scientists believe the treatment could give me up to 8 weeks of emotional capacity, she said in her flat voice. But there are risks, side effects we do not fully understand. What do you want to do? Jiwon asked. I am content with my baseline state. I do not feel I am missing something. But my emotional self, she paused. She writes about how much she wishes she had more time with you. How 3 weeks is never enough. So you want to do it? For her? I want your opinion. Both versions of me value your judgment. Jiwon thought carefully before answering. Don't do it. Myra tilted her head, surprised. Why not? Would you not want more time with my emotional self? Of course I would, but not at the cost of changing who you are. He took her hand. Even baseline Myra allowed this small contact now. I fell in love with you as you are. Both versions of you, 3 weeks and 11 months. That's the reality of loving you, and I've made peace with it. You would choose 3 weeks when you could have 8? Yes, because those 3 weeks are precious, exactly because they're rare. And because those 11 months with you, even in baseline state, have taught me something important. What have they taught you? That love doesn't require constant reciprocation to be real. That commitment isn't about getting something back. It's about choosing to stay, choosing to care, choosing to be present even when it's hard. He smiled at her. You've given me that gift. Both versions of you. Why would I want to change it? For the first time in 4 years, Jiwon saw something in baseline Myra's eyes that looked almost like emotion, a flicker of understanding that went deeper than logic. You are a remarkable human, Jiwon Park, she said quietly. I just love you. That's all. Myra declined the treatment. When the next bonding season arrived and emotional Myra learned what Jiwon had said, she cried in his arms. You chose 3 weeks with me over 8 weeks? She asked through her tears. I chose you. All of you. Just as you are. They stood together in the observation deck, watching the stars like they had done so many times before. Do you ever regret it? Myra asked. Choosing this life? Choosing me? Jiwon pulled her closer. Every moment with you is worth a year of waiting. And every moment without you is worth enduring for the next time you remember. She rested her head on his shoulder. When I'm in baseline state, I can't feel this. But I know intellectually that it's real, that you love me even when I can't love you back. And somehow that knowledge is enough to sustain both versions of me. That's all I need to hear. Years continued to pass. 5 years. 7. 10. The rhythm of their lives became as natural as breathing. 3 weeks of intensity followed by 11 months of patient devotion. Jiwon never stopped writing his letters. Myra never stopped reading them when she could feel. Other species began to study human emotional capacity more seriously. The Vallani Council published papers on Jiwon's consistent attachment patterns. Cross-species relationships became more accepted, with human-Vallani partnerships no longer seen as impossible. Jiwon's brother Minho visited the station in the 12th year. He had been skeptical of the relationship from the start, worried about his brother's happiness. Minho arrived during a baseline period. He watched Jiwon and Myra work together, eat together, spend time in comfortable silence. What he saw surprised him. She really does care about you, Minho said one evening, even now when she can't feel it emotionally. I can see it in how she looks at you, Jiwon smiled. She protects what her emotional self cherishes. It's not romantic love, but it's real in its own way. And you're really happy, living like this? I'm happy. It's not the happiness most people understand, but it's mine. It's ours. Minho shook his head in wonder. You're either the bravest person I know or the craziest. Maybe both. One night during the 15th year, during a bonding season, Myra asked Jiwon a question that had been weighing on her mind. What happens when we're old? When my biology starts to fail? The bonding seasons might become shorter, or stop entirely. Jiwon had thought about this too. Then we'll deal with it together. If you never wake emotionally again, I'll still be here. Your baseline self has become my partner too in her own way. You would stay even if I could never feel again? Yes, because love isn't about what I get in return. It's about choosing to stand beside you. Always, Myra cried, but they were happy tears. Humans really are remarkable. Your capacity for constant devotion. Other species are starting to see it now. What we always thought was a weakness, your constant emotions, is actually your greatest strength. Maybe. Or maybe it's just love. Real love. The kind that doesn't count the cost. 20 years after they first met, Jiwon sat in his quarters reading through old letters. Hundreds of them now documenting 2 decades of love and longing. Baseline Myra found him there. She sat beside him without asking. You are reading old memories, she observed. Yes. 20 years of bonding seasons. 20 years of waiting. Do you regret any of it? Jiwon looked at her. Even in baseline state, she was beautiful. The silver in her hair now matched the silver that was starting to show in his. Not a single moment, he said honestly. Every day with you, emotional or baseline, has been a gift. Something flickered in her eyes. That same almost emotion he had seen years ago, stronger now. I cannot feel what my emotional self feels for you, she said slowly, but I want you to know something. In my own way, in the way that I am capable of, I value you. I choose to be near you. I choose to protect what we have built together. Is that not a kind of love too? Jiwon felt tears spring to his eyes. In 20 years, baseline Myra had never said anything like that. Yes, he whispered. It's a kind of love. Your kind of love. And it's beautiful. She reached out and took his hand. They sat together in silence, 2 beings from different worlds who had learned to love across an impossible divide. The next bonding season arrived like it always did. Emotional Myra woke in Jiwon's arms, crying happy tears like she always did. But this time she had a message from her baseline self. She wrote me a letter, Myra said, voice full of wonder. My baseline self. She's never done that before. What does it say? Myra read aloud, her voice shaking. Dear emotional self, I want you to know that I understand now. I cannot feel what you feel, but I have learned to value it. G1 has taught me that love takes many forms. Mine is different from yours, but it is no less real. Take care of him during these weeks. I will take care of him during mine. Together we are complete. Both of them cried then. 20 years of devotion, 20 years of patience, 20 years of loving across the divide between emotion and logic. And finally, both versions of Myra understood what they had built together. That evening, they stood in the observation deck like they had done on their very first bonding season together. The stars looked the same as they always had, eternal and unchanging. What is forever? Myra asked.